right. Well, welcome today. This is our first time ever recording the Coffee with the Commissioners, and I am honored to have our new County Engineer Andy Shahan as our very first guest. And so I think this will be a great time for our listeners to get to know a whole lot more about you.
Yeah.
And about the office.
Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Carolyn.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So first of all, tell us how long you've been on the job.
Well, as county engineer since, I think, July 30th.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But I've been at the office since October of 2023. So going on whatever that is, roughly 9 months.
Right.
Yeah.
And right. And how did you, just for any listeners who might not be aware, how come you took office just a month ago?
So my predecessor is Paul Gruner.
Okay.
And he retired as effective July 26th. So that started the kind of the chain of events.
The whole process.
The whole process, right.
Right.
So there was, the commission took action to make me the acting county engineer.
Right.
That was on the 30th, and then the party supported me in terms of fulfilling the balance of Paul's term.
Awesome.
Been at it for just a couple weeks, really.
Right. So it's an appointment at this stage, and you'll be running for re-election or for election in November.
Correct. So I was on the primary ballot in March, and then I'll be on the November ballot. And so Paul knew that he was not going to seek re-election, so we started that process at the end of last year. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, so we know why you're here and you're in this particular position at this time before your election. But I think most of the listeners won't know much about you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, as well as, just before you even came to the engineer's office, where are you from, your family, your professional background, things you think is important for our listeners to know.
Yeah, so first and foremost, my wife and I, Katrina, we've been married for 19 years. We live in Miamisburg.
Okay.
I grew up in Englewood.
Okay. So, from the north down to the south.
Down to the south, right. Yeah, straddling the county, downtown.
Okay.
Have 4 kids. My oldest is 25, 19, 17, and 11.
All right.
So
I'm guessing you're very busy then.
They keep me busy. I'm definitely an engaged father. They've all been active in sports in some capacity, and one of the ways for me to engage is to coach them.
Okay.
And so,
what sports do you coach?
So that's a loaded question.
Okay.
So, not only have I coached all of my kids in some sport or another, I've been doing that for about 24 years now. I also coach high school softball at Bellbrook High School.
Awesome.
So other people's kids, not just mine. Yeah, so that's kind of been a natural, evolution of my coaching experience. So I went to the University of Evansville in Indiana.
Okay.
And I played football there.
Okay.
So I like to tell everybody that's the competitive spirit that kind of got me into coaching my kids.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So my oldest 2 are daughters, but I wasn't really introduced to softball through them. Actually, my father was a coach at Northmont High School.
Okay.
And my sister was a pretty good player, and she played at Miami of Ohio.
Okay.
And so,
well, that's my own logic.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I was just a baseball, football guy in high school, but was around the game because of my family. So when first 2 kids are daughters, softball's the first baseball-related sport.
Well, it is interesting how fathers can, if you already have a great interest in it,
Yeah.
and you're in a family, you can pick up the skills and help your children and their friends. And, I know that my husband did similar things like that with our children, and he never played in high school, but he loved the sport. And then it's just a whole nother level of involvement with school-age kids.
Well, because we have a few years in between our oldest 2 daughters. My oldest was a very talented softball player, and so I was in the thick of
tournaments,
travel softball, and trying to get her and all of her teammates into the college opportunities. And I call her my middle daughter, but she's daughter number 2. She really didn't have any interest in softball. She just got lugged along to all the tournaments.
Okay. Sometimes siblings
that's
find
how
themselves.
It works, right? And I learned pretty early in my time coaching her that she preferred me to be a dad that just sat and watched, not necessarily coached her. And so I had a little bit of time where I wasn't coaching anybody because my youngest two boys were real little, and so I convinced my wife to let me look for a high school job, and so that's how that started.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that's how that all morphed
so
into.
in between daughter one and daughter two, I started coaching high school, and
Obviously, you enjoy it.
Yeah, daughter number two, she surprised us. Came home one day and said, "I think I'm gonna try out for the middle school softball team." And I was like, "Where did that come from?" Meanwhile, I'm coaching at a high school, and
Right.
so she played high school softball for 3 seasons, and I convinced her to allow me to go and help her coach at Bellbrook High School, and so that's how I ended up at Bellbrook.
Okay.
So that's
Very cool.
and so this is season number 3 with Bellbrook for me.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to see if I can't catch a game
Yeah,
next year.
It'll be a lot of fun to have
Yeah.
everybody come out and watch.
So professionally, tell us a little bit more about your background
Sure.
as far as engineering.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I went to University of Evansville in Indiana, and I got a bachelor's of science in civil engineering. Graduated, came back home, and got a job at a local firm, LJB, which is a consulting engineering and architecture firm.
Okay.
And for like the first 2 years, I was doing both engineering and surveying work because that's the nature of the business that we had.
Right.
And so I got some experience on the surveying side, enough to think, I may be interested in that too. That's important because to be a county engineer, you have to be licensed as both a professional engineer and a professional surveyor.
And there's not many people that do that,
Yeah,
right?
not very many. And thinking about our time together today, I went to the State Board of Registration's website to try to figure out like exactly how many dual licensed professionals are there in Montgomery County. And
Right.
There's a lot of professional engineers because that can span multiple disciplines, civil, mechanical,
Certainly.
right? But surveying is its own discipline. And so
Right.
I first went to how many licensed surveyors do we have in Montgomery County?
Okay.
And then worked backwards. There's about 30 licensed surveyors, and I worked backwards who's also got an engineering license. So there's 9 of us.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, which includes Paul, who just retired.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And
So
some
you're a
other
small-
retirees. It's a small group. Yeah.
Small group of people.
Small group, yeah, who were qualified for the office. And so so I got that experience at LJB early, got dual licensed, finished getting my surveying license in 2007. So
Okay.
I've been dual licensed for however long that is, 15 years.
Okay.
And so my professional experience at LJB was we called it transportation focus. So I actually got to serve the county engineer's office as a consultant.
So you've worked
I
with
have.
the
Oh yeah. So not only with Paul, but with Joe Litvin prior.
certainly.
And so actually my very first design project as an engineer out of college was on Liberty Ellerton Road in Jefferson Township.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I worked with a young engineer at the time, Cedric McGee, and he's currently on staff.
Right. Right.
So I joke with him. I tell him, I came to the county 25 years later. My first project was working with Cedric in the county. And it's funny how the projects like that, they stick with you because I can still remember the property owners' names around the bridge
Right.
that we replaced. And
All those
so,
first.
Yeah, right, you do. So got to work on a lot of projects here locally, but also at LJB. We served outside of the state of Ohio, and my responsibility was primarily with the departments of transportation. So I led all of our business with ODOT. That's the acronym for Ohio Department of Transportation. And then also with Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, KYTC is their acronym there.
Okay.
So focused on interstate type work.
So it's a
for
pretty
them.
natural.
It was. We also did a lot of work for local government. And so,
Okay.
I would work for the city of fill in the blank, or the counties across the state, probably about 40 of the counties
All
across
right.
Ohio. So, and I got to do a lot of work in Montgomery County.
Well, and that'll all come back to help us in projects that we encounter.
Yeah. So, that's part of the reason working here locally is part of the reason that I was intrigued by the opportunity, knowing that Paul had a timeline in mind for retirement. The projects that I got to design in my career at LJB that were most rewarding were the ones that were local to where I lived, where my my family and friends and
Right.
everybody.
You drive by and say, I did that.
Yeah, right.
I worked on that. I
Yeah,
contributed to
and
that.
my kids will laugh because I'm since they've been little, I drive Dad did that, and so
Of course.
they'll have comments about that all the time. But once all my kids started to get to driving age, so I have 3 drivers now, and I don't know. I started thinking more about, roads and bridges right around where I live.
You want them to be safe.
Yeah, I want those to be safe, right? And so, that was a rewarding opportunity for me to say, okay, I could do more of that,
Wonderful.
in this role. So.
And as the county engineer, I have learned this much in my years in county government, that we are a county that has well over 500 bridges, right?
Yeah.
And then, so you're responsible for the maintenance of those, as well as what roads in the county is the county engineer responsible for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, first, anecdotally, I learned once I started here that we have more bridges than any other county in Ohio.
I'd heard that.
Yeah, I did not know that. It's over 500. And then we have about roughly 320 lane miles of road.
Okay.
All right. So in Ohio, listeners will be probably curious how this works. So in Ohio, you have different agencies responsible for roadways and bridges.
Right.
So I'll work big to little. So the Department of Transportation, ODOT, is responsible for interstates, state routes, that sort of thing. And then the counties are responsible for county routes. County routes are defined, they're owned by the commission, and generally they're through routes. So routes that have a long length origin and destination to them. And then you have cities that are responsible for roads that are in their jurisdiction, and then townships that have some responsibility for roadways as well.
Right.
And actually, there are private roads out there too. Not very many, but there are some that are.
And you're not responsible for private roads.
Yeah, I'm not responsible
just
for those.
county roads.
Right, just
Let's
county roads.
be clear about this. Yeah. Just county roads. Which is a lot
Although
of them.
we get, I've learned in the 10 months in the office, we get calls about roads, all kinds of roads, and sometimes I have to tell them, well, you're not talking to the right person. I've got to connect you with the city or the township or whomever.
Right. So, okay. So how big is your staff, the county engineer's staff, and what are your biggest projects?
Yeah. So we have about 100 people in the organization. And
okay.
It's split. So we have two offices, which is kind of a unique situation where I have primarily our engineering staff's in the administration building downtown. And then we have our operations division, which is out on Little Richmond Road in Trotwood. That is about 60 people. And so there's roughly 40 downtown and 60 people out there. So our operations divisions, you think about that's where all of our trucks and equipment and where our labor is to take care of the roads, the things that I'm responsible for. They're the people that take care of it, right? And so when you ask me about projects, you think about that through 2 lenses. One is capital improvements, things that we're working on to replace or to improve and make bigger,
right?
More lanes or a wider bridge,
right.
So the folks downtown are the ones that work on those projects. The people in Little Richmond, they're really charged with taking care of maintaining what we have, right?
Right.
And so they have projects as well. They're just a different focus. It's replacing a pipe that's underneath the road that's maybe failing or has already failed, or it's potholes, or it's things that we need to take care of so that the drive is comfortable, right?
Right.
So,
right.
So let's speak to projects that our downtown team is working on. I'll work big to small, just 3 of them. A really big project up around the airport, Northeast Logistics Association is how we referred to it, but it's improving. They call it the ring road, the roads on the north side of the airport that are county maintained.
Okay.
Dixie, Lightner Road, those are the 2 primary ones. So the intention here is to get truck traffic from I-75 and Northward Boulevard to all of the development that's northwest of the airport without driving through downtown Vandalia.
Right.
And,
to keep that
trucks
more
away
to the
from
regular traffic and not these big trucks.
Right. And so that's a big project for our office. It's like $20 million price tag, which is that's a big endeavor for us, and especially when you think about it in terms of our overall budget on an annual basis is only about $24 million. So
that's huge.
It is. It's a huge project. Fortunately, we've got great partnerships both locally and at the state and federal level to help pay for that. But that's a big project that we're working on. And then, we've got an interesting project down on Dayton Cincinnati Pike, which is old 25, runs in between Miamisburg and Franklin, and in Warren County. And there's a wall there that is about 125 years old. That we're
I think we had a
saw that in
viewing
for that.
Yes, just the other day.
It's unique. Unique so much so that when I first learned about the project, when I joined the office, I said, this is an awful big wall.
Right, 800 feet. That's a big
and it's
wall.
15 foot tall.
And it's very, very old.
If you want to see what 125-year-old concrete looks like, you can go out and use a Great Miami River Rec Trail, and you ride your bike right by it. Well,
I'm amazed that 125-year-old concrete's still standing.
It's got a really interesting story to it. We'll have some information out on our website. It was a wall that was designed for the traction line in the canal system that ran right there historically. And so, now we have a road there.
Right.
But, 125 years ago, it looked a lot different than what's
Just a tad.
Yeah. So that's a really cool project.
Did we even have cars hardly back then?
Yeah, right. And
they were pretty new.
If we did, they were on dirt roads or on the towpath
right.
along the canal system
right.
In that area. So that's a really cool project. But then we'll do things as small as a storm sewer across Shiloh Springs Road. The basins are failing right now, which causes some flooding on the roadway, which
right.
obviously you don't want. So
you have a great variety of projects that you cover.
Absolutely. And so, that leads to when you think about your projects, is this something that we want to do with our team internally, or is it something that we need to outsource to a consultant to help us with the design?
So how often, how many of your projects are, you can do them all yourself, or you work with a contractor or a
right.
consultant, and
right.
it's totally, and probably some are more than one, right?
Yes.
The more complicated ones
so
might have a number.
There's a lot of I guess, decision points that go into making the decision whether or not we're going to leverage either a design consultant to get through the engineering phase of the project development, or a contractor that we need to leverage to build it. So because we have the capability of building our own improvements, just scale sometimes will weigh into, okay, is this the best use of our resources?
Right.
Would it distract us from all the other things that we have to do to
right.
try to tackle something bigger? Same thing on the engineering side. But sometimes there's an expertise that, the wall project that I mentioned earlier, we don't design retaining walls all that often. And so
right. Might make sense.
Right.
That
Could
you
we
bring
do
in
it?
somebody
Yeah,
that's
but
more.
it would make sense to bring, in a consultant that designs walls all the time.
Right.
To be more efficient with the.
They would know all the latest.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, and the other part of it is, I think that this happened in the past, but this will certainly happen moving forward. But to the extent that I can allow our staff to choose the projects that they're working on, I want to do that, because that's how we retain talent. When people can choose the work that they're working
right.
on, then it feels less like work, right?
Right.
And even though it is work, but it'll feel less like work. And so
right.
I want to try to give them the opportunity to choose what we would work on, both on the design side and on what we build. So.
Right. Well, so we've been talking about different size projects.
Yeah.
Where does the money come from? You said you have a $24 million typically project. Where does the money come from that pays for all this?
Well, so our office is funded through gas tax. I mean, basically it's a user fee type system. So
okay.
registrations for vehicles and fuel, when we go get that at the pump, a portion of what we're paying at the pump per gallon
goes to the
goes to that. It's called gas tax, right? So, but the reality is the revenues that we collect relative to that on a yearly basis is not enough to take care of the system that we're charged with maintaining. And so, so we have to find funding opportunities for that. Grants, loans, those are both ways that we would tackle that. There's lots of different opportunities for us there. Federal funding is a place that we leverage all the time, and that's really important, because generally speaking, when we're successful in securing federal funding on projects, which is most of the time administered through ODOT, it's 80%, 20% local
right.
share type funding for us.
It's a smart way to do it.
Oh yeah, so we're investing 20% of our local money, and we're leveraging other people's money to.
Right. Well, we all pay into that.
We do, but that allows us to deliver projects that we otherwise wouldn't be
do
able to
far
do.
more than if it was just
Right,
through the
right.
gas tax.
And that's just one example. I mean, we leverage OPWC for funding. That's a big part of our
And what would
strategy.
OPWC?
Ohio Public Works Commission. Thank you for reminding me not to use all the acronyms.
I know. Well,
engineers
we
love
get
to do it.
yeah.
So,
Well, all of us
yeah.
tend to use our buzzwords
Right,
and
yeah.
acronyms.
So OPWC, Ohio Public Works Commission, has a program that's actually it's a funded program for over a 10-year period, and that's going to be an issue that we'll be dealing with here soon for the next 10 years.
Okay.
But I don't know what the exact number is, and I'd hate to guess, but I would say that we probably are leveraging, I don't know, $2 to $4 million a year of OPWC funds to deliver capital program for us. And
Excellent.
that's
like 10
that's a big deal. So when I
10,
mention
20%.
we think about our overall budget's roughly 24 million. About 13 million of that annually is dedicated specifically to capital projects. So if 2 to 4 million of that 13
makes a
is
big
OPWC,
difference.
it's a big percentage of the work that we're doing. So yeah, we have to go seek other funding sources, or else we wouldn't be able to do the things that
Right.
we need to do to keep everybody safe.
Well, now I have to ask you about this. Has been something that Paul was a big proponent of, the roundabout.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that the first roundabout in the U.S. was in 1990.
Yeah.
The major one. I'm
Maybe
sure there
major
were.
one. Yeah.
And in Montgomery County, we just built one, and there might be some others, but I
Yeah.
know one down in the area of the county that I live. I live down in Centerville in Washington Township. There was a roundabout built there.
Yeah.
So are we going to see more roundabouts in the future? And what's been the success of that first roundabout?
Yeah. So answering your first question, yes, we will see more roundabouts, and we've actually, our office, under Paul's leadership, implemented a roundabout at Mad River Road and Alex Bell Road. Been, I think, hugely successful. But you should ask, what are the metrics that say it's successful, right? And I
Right.
would tell you, roundabouts generally are installed at intersections for two reasons. One, it reduces the serious injury of crashes, and the reason for that is because everybody slows down.
Right.
If you have an intersection, if it's signalized, let's say if we put traffic signal,
Some people might try to beat it.
right, and the speeds are generally higher through the intersection. Higher speeds equal more serious accidents.
Makes sense.
And now, you build a roundabout doesn't mean there's fewer crashes. It just means there's fewer
Less.
serious injury crashes.
Right.
And that's a big deal to try to
Certainly,
preserve
for
life.
safety.
Right. Yeah. So finding the right place for that from a safety perspective makes sense, and then you also got to think about life cycle costs. If you install a traffic signal at an intersection, you're paying for electricity forever.
Right.
And with a roundabout, you don't have that, right? Now,
I
there's-
never thought about that,
Yeah,
honestly.
there's more cost up front to build the roundabout,
Right.
but over
But
the
then
long term,
one and
you're
done.
Right, one and done. Right, over the long term, you're saving some money. So now, roundabout's not the answer at every intersection. So
Right.
we're not converting everything to a roundabout, but at some locations,
It's now part of the
toolbox.
thought process.
Yeah, it's in our toolbox to deal with.
And as people encounter more of them, they're more comfortable
Yeah,
traversing them.
yeah, and the good news is some of our other neighboring counties.
Are starting to do
Yeah,
them
they're
too.
building them. I mean, Butler County has built a lot of roundabouts. The Department of Transportation, they're out in the more rural areas, the high-speed rural
Mm-hmm.
route intersections. They're building them very frequently now. So I think for driver awareness in Montgomery County, there's more of them. So understanding how to drive them should be easier than maybe it was
Good.
when we built the first one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're getting to the end of our time together. Just one last thing that I know that there's a lot of construction going on still yet this year. And so we have a lot of cones. What's your advice to all of our listeners when they see construction? What should they think about in order? I'm really thinking we're talking about
Right.
safety for
Yeah.
them as well as the workers.
right.
Any words of advice
Yeah,
of what
to-
we should be doing at these times?
Absolutely. Two very simple things. Slow down.
Slow down.
Yeah, slow down, and don't be distracted.
No texting,
yeah.
no-
Get off your phone. And actually distractions are not
yelling
just your
at
phone.
your,
Right.
you know,
It could be music too loud. Could be things in
Right.
the car. People in the car.
focus.
Yeah, limit your distractions. Don't be, and certainly that device that we're all so married to now, put that down.
Okay.
Turn it off, because those two things, going too fast and being distracted, big risk. Big risk. So
All
that's
right.
important.
Well, it's been a pleasure
Yeah.
having this
Thank you for having
conversation.
me.
It's first for me. Once again, I'm Montgomery County Commissioner Carolyn Rice, and we're having our conversation with our County Engineer Andy Shahan. There will be an election in November. We all know about the election. There's plenty of time if you haven't registered to vote. Early October, I think that
7th, maybe.
October 7th
Yep.
is the last day to register. So anyone listening, be sure you're registered. And early voting begins on August 8th, and the election is on November 5th. Want everyone to contribute. Thank you, Andy, for coming.
My pleasure.
And it's a delight, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come.
Same.
All right. Have a great afternoon.